The Book of Honey, by Isadora Rochas, Chapter 6, William Sheeran, December 15 to 17, 2029. William, sitting at my desk with a stack of files behind 6 computer monitors. Each monitor is relegated to a task. One has a spreadsheet of cases in various degrees of progress. One has a map of all the areas in the city I have teams and partners out on assignments. Then a schedule of appointments, calls, online meetings, and in-person meetings. Then a database login for our system intelligence, communications, and all criminal profiles. Then another spreadsheet of phone numbers and addresses for businesses and public offices. 2 screens were filing cabinets for office documents and written reports from various departments both at my station and other service sectors in His Majesty's government. I am William Sheeran, the youngest Chief Superintendent in His Majesty's Police Force of New Scotland Yard. I believe it has been over 100 years since anyone as young as me has been named Chief Superintendent. I have worked here for the last 3 years. I am currently 22. This doesn't escape the notice of most of the heads of my department, as well as some of the more seasoned veterans of our forces. 3 years ago, when I applied for the job, I told the Chief Constable who did my interview that I wanted the job of the Chief Superintendent Field Commander. He told me I was fooling myself. After I drop a couple of references, and my list of hands-on achievements, he could tell I was serious. When he stopped reading and asked me, "Do you want to grease the wheels like this?" I say to him, "It's my job to promote my worth to the highest possible position. Once I am there, I will prove with my actions, not words." Between my balls, my grades, and my connections, I impress him enough to make it to Chief Inspector at the age of 19. I had just moved back to London following my internship with Bruce Beck. While finishing up my degree at 20. My granddad had just passed away the year before. I spent 6 months as a chief inspector with my gran when she too passed away. I was raised by my grandparents from the age of 3 to 17. There are many days when I miss them sorely. I qualified to take the test for chief superintendent at 21. No one expected me to pass the test almost perfectly. There was an opening in New Scotland Yard, London, which was where I wanted to be. It was a do-or-die moment and I passed. The department heads were reluctant. They even had the balls to make me retake the written test when I passed with an even better score. They knew I wasn't all mouth and no trousers. I was met with some resistance. I've proven I'm worth having around. The biggest thanks to my success was my mentor Bruce Beck, an American liaison for the CIA, working in our branch of the SIS here in London. There were a few cases where our department had to work with the SIS, as well as the CIA. Most of the time when that happened, the credit went to the highest-ranking party in the alliance. When that happens, I found that very few are willing to work with the government's higher departments. As the saying goes, where there is no glory there is no gold. So, whenever one of these assignments came up, I jumped to take it on. Most cringe at the puzzle of human services. I love to surprise a seasoned office worker with all the right papers and approvals before I even walked in the door. My commander saw the ease and grace I used to cut my way through all the red tape. If I couldn't find it, I knew who could. It was never beneath me to talk to anyone, whether it was the oldest lady on the janitor's staff or the youngest man on the squad. I tried to handle people in just the right way. That makes me sound like a snob, I know. It is how I get the job done. The Chief Constable made me a Strategic Alliance Department Coordinator, throwing me all the cases that deal with higher government cooperation. Unless a head of government asks for someone else, I am usually the person to handle these cases. Someone knocks at my door. I look up to see one of the most reliable detectives in my department. Brom Nolman says. William, everyone is ready for you. I say. Thank you, Brom, I will be there in a lick. Handing out all the assignments for the week and the instructions on how to conduct themselves out in the field. When I'm done, I look at my watch. It's 11 and I had a meeting with Beck this afternoon. I grab my jacket and straighten myself up, telling my top team Brom and Wood that I would be out for the rest of the day. I head to the National Audit Office, the not-so-secret home of the British SIS. I've arrived at the CIA liaison office inside the National Audit Building. Then to Bruce Beck, a very rough and tumble American, as they say. I'm given my visitor's badge. Then I make my way to his receptionist's desk. One Marion Wildermuth is a short brown-haired curvy woman, but surprisingly strong. I once saw her pick up water coolers when a man's cart ran into her desk and spilled the large containers all over the floor. She picked them up 2 at a time, helping him stack them back up. That was a lesson to never underestimate what women might be capable of. I've talked to her a few times waiting on Beck. She has worked for Beck for as long as I've known him. I always try to be polite but never accessible. I have been told on several occasions that I am a downright flirt, even when I have no intentions of flirting with anyone. My last relationship ended almost 2 years ago. It was a wake-up call for me to rethink the way I approached a relationship. So, I've sworn off dating for the time being. Marion saw me coming. She waved for me to go into Beck's office. Bruce Beck is a man in his 50s, his hairline was graying and thin. His face was always clean-shaven, with deep lines that looked like scars. He tops out at about 5'9". Today he was wearing a blue striped suit, white shirt, and a red, white, and blue diamond pattern tie. His brown eyes didn't miss a thing, with a stony expression that gave away nothing. Over the years I have tried to mimic this face with no success. He caught me trying and said it was all about the mindset. To be unflinching no matter what. Beck also told me my mindset was toward people pleasing. Always having the right expression at the right moment. It may have been his almost polite way of saying stop trying to be me. Bruce Beck is someone you can't help admiring, even if he is a man wrapped in sandpaper. Most thought Beck was a stubborn, paranoid old man, unlike me, a person pretending I know what I'm doing. Beck knew everything, without making too much fuss. Beck occasionally brought me in on cases. I was hoping for something big, I needed something big. With a little more pushing I could make field commander, by the end of the year. I had assumed this was one of those meetings. I soon found out that I was going to be wrong about a lot of things today. Walking into Beck's office, we greet each other with handshakes and friendly small talk. When I noticed sitting at Beck's desk cross-legged in a chair was a girl by the look of her in a hoodie and baggy blue jeans. She kept her hood up the entire time. I could feel her stare scanning me right back from under the hood. When I say to Beck, "It has been a spell, Beck, what are we up to today?" he says, "William, I'm really glad you could make it. Please have a seat so I can introduce you and we can get started." This was odd for Beck. I take my seat next to the girl who seemed to be on her phone. I didn't want to outright stare at her. So, I start scanning the room when my eyes land on the mirror at the back of Beck's office. Her head was tilted in a way where I can only see her nose and lips. When she reaches her hand up to scratch her nose with one finger. It takes me a sec to realize she's flipping me off in the mirror. It made me jolt realizing she was staring back at me in the same manner. I didn't want to let Beck know she caught me looking at her, so I scanned around the room again. When I checked from the corner of my eye, she was sticking her tongue out to let me know she had caught me. but she stopped when Beck came back in. Beck makes a sweep of me and the room. I take no offense knowing the man's paranoia made him damn good at his job. He called Marion, his receptionist, to put up the Do Not Disturb sign and placed his phone in his desk drawer. Once he was satisfied, he proceeded to introduce me to this girl. "Honey, this is William Sheeran, I told you about him. Please stand and introduce yourself." I stood for her waiting as she took off the hoodie and hangs it on the back of her chair. What I thought was a girl I could no longer tell. A lean young woman with a honey blonde and elaborate mohawk, with undershavings on the sides of her head. Her arms were ripped, she has the stance of a boxer or fighter, hands were wrapped in bandages. She had several bruises and countless scars of different ages on her arms and face. She seemed to be a bit gaunt, like she didn't always get enough to eat. She stood at attention as she introduced herself. "I'm Honey the Leona Bee, nice to meet a friend of my Uncle Bruce." Her accent was slight but sounded like Beck's. Thinking that was an odd way to address herself. We shook hands. Hers were rough, covered in calluses and more scars. My hands looked baby smooth compared to hers. Her skin was a dark tan color. Her face was a blank mask I was almost envious of, but the one thing about her that stood out above everything else were her amber-colored eyes. Something about her eyes staring right through me made me feel like I was naked. Like she was a cat trying to figure out what to do with me. We sit and I raise an eyebrow at Beck, very confused. He shrugged as we settled. "Now that you kids know each other, William, Honey is my niece on the inside of CEOs." I glanced at Honey and then back at Beck. "Are you serious? You've been chasing that circle for some time?" He tells me. "As serious as a heart attack." Well, my chase became a lead when Honey walked into my office. I talked to Beck in a very casual way. We have known each other for a while now. It took me a long time to get to this place of familiarity with him. So, I talked to him like I normally would. Not thinking about the other person in the room. Who was verily making a noise. I'd like to hear that one. But just as Beck was about to elaborate, Honey cut the two of us off. "You can share all the details you'd like with him once I'm gone. I have valuable intel to give him and you, so don't waste my time on a story I already know." I was a bit surprised when I looked at Beck. What was an even bigger surprise was he didn't reprimand her at all. That Beck was letting her cut him off. He never was one to let a young person off the hook after such a scene in front of other people. I've seen him work with several informants. Who the hell was she that Bruce Beck had nothing to say to her rudeness? Beck says to her, "You're right, Honey, let's proceed." I just nod, keeping my disbelief to myself. When she thanked him very apparently. "Thank you, Uncle Bruce." Beck seemed to sit up a little straighter at her words. She flashed a smile that sends a chill down my spine. It was gone and replaced by a stone grin. She places a breath mint container on the desk and slides it to Beck. "This is the usual pack of data for arms deals, drugs, trafficking, and so on. The big one is the kids being dropped off in August. They are landing north just outside of London in 8 months. All you have to do is sit on your asses waiting. Take this slowly, there will be fewer mistakes, and more progress if you are easy with what you're looking for, because if you tip off the wrong person, I have to start all over again. It could take months." I was doing my best to keep up with the conversation. Honey stops to lean on Beck's desk and points at me. Honey is deliberately angling herself in a way where I can only see a bit of her at a time. So, I was trying to take in details about her, hoping Beck would explain later. She wasn't the tallest thing in the world. I bet if I stood up, She would fit just under my chin, making her about 5'6" or so. Whether she was talking to me or back, she always made eye contact. No flinching or averting her eyes, but direct. Honey was a bold individual. Not many people can stare Bruce Beck in the face and come away unshaken, myself included. She stopped and gave me a look. It seemed to be one of annoyance. It was gone before I could make sure. When she continued to address us. My tips are: pay close attention to missing children reports in poor neighborhoods both here and in the US. Sometimes they come from all over. Tip 2: watch out for moles inside the locals. There is a list of the ones I know, but don't let anyone there too close to have a piece of this pie. They will tip off the drop people and drown the ducklings. A lot happened in a short amount of time between Beck and Honey. They seemed to have a language that they were speaking to each other. I could only follow snippets. The main point being a raid was taking place in summer. It was London's jurisdiction, and I would be helping lead the operation. It was annoying to be in a place and left out at the same time. She looked at her phone and says to Beck, "Okay, Uncle Bruce, that is all the time I have for lunch today. If there is a place we could meet up, tell me now. I have 5 days till I must be back for roll call. Then we're going to be gone till drop time." She stands and puts her hoodie on inside out. It goes from black to brown. She puts it back on and covers her face with a mask, flashing me another bone-chilling smile before she covered her face. I felt like prey, and she was looking for a good meal. When she says to Beck and me, "It was nice meeting you, William. See you soon. Uncle Bruce, walk me to the front door if you don't mind." I verily had enough time to stand, shake her hand, and speak. Likewise. Beck says to me as he is leaving, "William, I will be back in a lick to start combing through things."
Honey, I was sitting in Uncle Bruce's office waiting. This was only the 3rd time I'd been here. I tried to only come here when I have no other choice. Today Bruce is introducing me to a younger colleague from New Scotland Yard. One William Sheeran. Bruce said he was going to start putting together the task force and needed local authorities to be the ones in charge, or he would get in trouble for interference. William was the only one he trusted. Uncle Bruce had always been more cautious than man at any given moment. This is something I have come to know and greatly appreciate about him. There is a knock at the door. I instantly put my head down to check him out on the sly through the mirror in the back of the office. He is a tall, handsome-looking man. His black hair and deep blue eyes. Clean shave, but his pleasant smile seems fake. But he was paying attention because he didn't miss me as I sat and looked at him, and he checked me out right back. I flipped him off in the mirror. It was subtle. I see him flinch. He plays it off like it didn't happen. I was pleased with the reaction, so when he looked out the corner of his eye, I stuck my tongue out at him just so he knew it wasn't a mistake and that I had caught him. Uncle Bruce walked back into the room. We both seemed to sit up a little straighter. Then all of a sudden it hits me, this was the bad suit guy. His name was William. I remembered him from outside the bap shop. That suit made him look a lot older than he was. I would put him between 21 to 25. This suit was 10 times better. It was a royal blue, with a matching vest, white undershirt, and black tie. He was still spotting all the tan leather shoes, belt, and watch. He seemed handsome and charming. I refused to buy it. Because I know that a pretty face didn't often mean a good person. I scanned his face a bit. It seemed to be all better from the assault he had taken the last time. I could see there were still a few scars on the sides of his face. After I introduced myself and dumped my info in Bruce's lap, I left the mind-reeled William Sheeran speechless, before I had to wait for a long conversation about how much he missed between me and Uncle Bruce. Uncle Bruce walks me out once we hit the elevator and leans into me. "So, what's your take on William, honey?" I gave Uncle Bruce a pointed look before rolling my eyes and answering. "A pretty boy that gets what he wants." Uncle Bruce nods. "That is true, it can be useful when you're trying to keep things from blowing up." "What else?" He seems fake to me, like all I can see is skin. He also seems like a person that can get lost in himself easily." "What I see is not what I'm going to get, is it, Uncle Bruce?" Uncle Bruce raises an eyebrow. "That is sharp of you to pick up on." I wasn't going to elaborate on how long I studied the footage of William before I met Uncle Bruce. He didn't answer me, he just smiled. The elevator dinged and we get off at the lobby. "William will be your point in this coming out party because here I'm not allowed to lead this dance. He also has a much better handle on technology than me. He will be taking over your communication and translations. Give William a chance, he learns fast. It won't take him long to figure out how it all works." "How does that make you feel?" I shrug to Uncle Bruce and speak. "What is there to feel? I know nothing about him. All I can say is don't let him get in the way. I'm not stopping or explaining anything if he can't keep up. In no way am I going to dumb this down for him. He tells me, 'You'll have to wait and see, my girl.' I say, 'I guess I will be seeing you, Uncle Bruce.'" I am out the door and gone without anything else to say. William Sheeran, I can't say I didn't stop and think about him. There was something about the way Bruce asked about him that maybe he was trying to say something to me. Maybe I will do some research about him to see what I can find.